to the first bill on special orders, number 67, Senate File 716. Senator Bonoff.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in support of Senate File 716, be recommended to pass. Madam President, Senate File 716 is with regard to a transmission line. This is a very specific transmission line located in the western part of Plymouth. The story with regard to this proposed transmission line is that as we were door knocking this past summer, I knocked on a door and some neighbor came, to greet me and said, well, really the only thing on my mind is the fact that in my backyard, they are going to take that wooden pole out and put a 115K voltage power line, metal, right, as clear as you can see through that window, and they invited me in. Well, this story was repeated and repeated and repeated. Every single door I knocked on, these people were devastated about the potential of this proposed transmission line project. So this bill essentially does two things. It directs the Public Utilities Commission to issue a certificate of need. Current law states that a certificate of need is required for a route that is more than 10 miles long. This route has not yet been decided, but in fact it could be 8 miles, it could be more than 10 miles. So this bill states that for this project there must be a certificate of need. In addition, this bill states that if there is an alternative means to solving this distribution problem, that they should in fact use this alternative means. And in this particular case, there's been an alternative distribution solution that has been identified. This distribution solution would be the presence of some underground feeder lines that could address this very same situation. So, Madam President, we're going to be seeing these kinds of cases all over the state, whereby Xcel or other power companies have identified proposed routes where the distribution and the transmission output is insufficient to the demand. And so they're going to be making these decisions. And I think that we will want to consider in the future that when these lines are going to go through high density areas, that in fact, whether they're 3 miles or 10 miles, that we should take the time to do the certificate of need as the law currently requires for over 10 miles. So I wasn't prepared, obviously, to address this on a statewide issue. Therefore, this bill is tightly worded so that we're just dealing with, in this case, in this situation, we are requiring that these measures be sought. And I do have an amendment, Madam President. I would like to put forward the A1 amendment.
The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Bonoff moves to amend Senate File number 716 as follows: page 1, line 16, after the period insert.
Senator Bonoff.
Thank you, Madam President. I have gotten some concerns expressed to me with regard to making sure that as the power companies look at this issue and the PUC considers this issue, that things like being cost effective are considered. And so in fact, if you look at the statutes, it tells us, the original statute, that that consideration must include without limitation cost effectiveness, energy conservation, and the protection or enhancement of environmental quality. This is currently in our statutes, but we just wanted to make it crystal clear, members, that we were not asking with the introduction of this bill to not do these things, that in fact we're directing Xcel and the PUC to use existing law as they make their determination. So this bill just clarifies that we are not skirting those important issues.
Is there any discussion on the A1 amendment? Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the A1 amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. Motion prevails. Is Senator Bonoff?
That's it, Madam Chair. Right. I stand for questions.
Is there any discussion on Senate File 716? Senator Osmek.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in support of this bill. I am an author on it. This also impacts the city of Medina, which also is part of the transmission area. And I'm proud to support this because it does impact my residents. Will the author yield for a brief moment?
Will Senator Bonoff yield? Senator Bonoff will yield. Senator Osmic.
Senator Bonoff, you actually beat me to the punch, because the one question I had for you is that this is somewhat of a piecemeal approach, that I think in the density of suburban areas that we're going to see this more and more. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I would ask the question, would you be interested in working with me on perhaps a more global solution during the interim? Obviously, we can't do it in this session, but a more global solution for the suburban areas so that we can have this type of legislation apply more broadly to the state.
Senator Bonoff.
Madam President, Senator Osmic, I would be happy to, because this really has been an eye-opening experience for me, and I'm present to what could this be like for, communities all over our region when they're going to find themselves in this situation and not know where to turn and really how to ask the proper questions and what the right questions are to ask. It's very scary at the thought of what this means to property values, to health, and so making sure that we do have a uniform procedure to address certificate of need issues and the ramifications on high density areas is very important, and I welcome the opportunity to work with you. And also, I know Senator Limmer, this touches your community as well, and so I appreciate the support of my colleagues.
Is there any more discussion? Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Madam President. Would Senator Bonoff yield?
Senator Bonoff, will you yield? Senator Bonoff will yield. Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Bonoff, in your presentation, you mentioned certificate of need. In committee or prior to, were there costs mentioned as far as from the department or from the company that's going to be implementing these certificate of needs?
Senator Bonoff.
Madam President, this is ordinary course of business for Excel and the PUC. They did not identify there would be a cost. The only identified cost was there was a cost identified of $12,000 because in the bill on line, let's see, it's the clear and convincing line. Oh, on line 1.15, it says the certificate of need may be approved only if the commission finds by clear and convincing evidence that there is no feasible. They hadn't used that phrase before, so they thought it would take more due diligence to do their analysis. So they, when we asked for a fiscal note, they identified $12,000. But what I'm told is that those things, and again, this is just my understanding, get charged back to the power company. We are not carrying a cost in our state budget for this.
Is there any other discussion? Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Bonoff, I want to thank you for creating this bill. It's a bipartisan bill. I suppose it represents more of the greater Hennepin County area, and I want to thank you for doing this. This has been an issue that has kind of challenged us, at least in the Maple Grove and further to the northwest area of Hennepin County. As development continues to grow, they wrap around these old easement lines, and the old easement lines demanding more power. The power companies think that they can come along and just add on more and more carrying capacity, but that's running in conflict with what the neighborhoods feel is safe or, and in many cases, unsightly. And so I want to thank you for doing this. I've had to wrestle with this issue before, and I think we have, well, I want to compliment you for working with all of the parties on this particular bill. I know that some of them, especially the power companies, some of them are leery, but at the same time, you've created the balance to make a good law work. Thank you.
Senator Bonoff.
Madam President, just in summary, I do want to acknowledge Xcel Energy in particular and the PUC both for their willingness to work with me. As Senator Limmer said, this wasn't easy for them, and they have been very supportive.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the Secretary will give Senate File 716 its third reading.
Senate File Number 716, a bill for an act relating to energy, regulating the assessment of need and routing of certain transmission lines.
Is there any further discussion? The Secretary will take the roll. All senators having voted, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 61 in favor, 0 opposed, the bill is passed and its title agreed to.